Hello and welcome to Retro Reviews, my channel where I review my favorite retro video games of all time, as well as some modern releases I have recently finished. Today I want to look at a retro game that I had so much fun with that I just barely beat, and I had to talk about right away, and that's Castlevania Aria of Sorrow for the Game Boy Advance. Now, the Castlevania series is part of gaming royalty, primarily because it helped inspire an entire genre. Along with Metroid games, you had the 2D side-scrolling Castlevania games combined to become Metroidvania. And the Game Boy Advance ones are some of the best in the entire genre of games. Of course, you have Symphony of the Night, which is probably the best one in the entire franchise, but I love the Game Boy Advance titles as well. So I wanted to replay through Aria of Sorrow, and I had a blast. There was so much I didn't remember about it, and I had such a good time 100%ing this game. Since this game is very old, I will be spoiling the game. It's not a super long game, maybe 5-6 hours if you're going for 100%, but I will be talking about the story in great detail and all of the things about the post game and like the secret ending and everything. So if you do want it to be unspoiled and you want to go play it yourself, this is your chance to get off the video. But with that out of the way, let's get on to Aria of Sorrow. So first and foremost, this one, you don't play as a Belmont in this game. You play as a man named Soma Cruz, who, with his friend Mina, go through a shrine during an eclipse and are suddenly teleported to a castle. Dracula's castle, in fact. You find out pretty quickly that Dracula died many decades ago and is primed to be resurrected on this eclipse. So you are mostly just trying to figure out how to leave this place. You just want to leave with your friend and get back to your normal life. But there's a strange power that Soma has where he can absorb the souls of demons and utilize their power. So this game works on like a 3-tiered system. You have blue souls, you have red souls, and you have yellow souls. You can get these from defeating enemies. Primarily, there's like an RNG chance that you'll get a soul from a specific enemy. All of them have a specific thing that you can get that will give you a unique attack or passive ability or something like that. So the red ones are primarily attacks. You can get things like shooting a fireball, throwing a seed that plants on someone and regenerates HP for you as it grows and hits them multiple times. You have other ways to utilize damage over time. And then you have the blue ones that are more passive abilities or things that can, or excuse me, not passive, the more like transformative abilities. These can sometimes be ones you can get from enemies as well, but some are also gained throughout your adventure as like permanent power-ups so that you can progress through areas that you weren't able to attain before, like the bat transformation where you can fly to places that were out of reach previously. And then other things that like give you a speed boost, change your form completely. These things are really interesting as well. And then you have the yellow ones that give you the passive upgrades. They give you stat boosts. They give you different abilities like being able to walk underwater, walk on top of water. So utilizing these souls is a really intricate detail of the games that you have to master in order to progress. But what's really nice is you don't need any specific souls except toward the very end. You will need 3 very specific souls if you want to get the final boss, the true ending. You need to utilize 3 specific souls when you fight the supposed final boss before you progress in the story to unlock the true ending of the game. I'll get to that later. You can mix and match these souls to really conform to your play style, and the way that you play, the way that you go about playing this game is all up to you. You have lots of different weapons and armor that you can utilize as well that give you different stat boosts, while also it can buff certain things, but it might neglect other things. Your weapons that you pick up might have short range, but might be really fast. You have other things that have long range, but might be really laggy. You can utilize the ability to cut off end lag of some weapons by jumping in the air and using them in the air, which will cut off the landing lag, which is very nice. Some weapons are just broken and are fast and have a huge range, but you usually don't get those until the end. So it's a trade-off of how you want to play the game. Some things might have a lot of attack, but maybe you don't like the end lag or how slow they are, or they don't have enough range. So you might utilize something that hits not as hard, but you can swing much faster. I love this style of play, the ability to pick and choose your weapons. Same thing with your defensive upgrades. Some things might boost your overall defense, might neglect some of your other stats. This is an RPG where you're leveling up as you attack. As you beat more enemies, you'll level up your character, give you more magic, give you more HP, and it will give you increase your stats as you go along. The way that you go about utilizing your weapon, your armor and your bonus item, which can do a plethora of things, can boost certain abilities, can boost your luck so you get better drops from enemies. You can get more money from people. All these things are integral to your success in this game. And the way you want to play it is really just up to your choice. You could grind different enemies and just try and get their souls. You could look on the Wikipedia to see which ones they drop, to see what abilities you want. Or you could just play it normally like I did, going for all the secrets, finding all the secret rooms. Some walls can be broken if you hit them long enough. They'll be indicated by little shakes and crumbling rocks and everything. If you go for these secrets, you might find bonus items that really help you out in the long run of the game. You also have a shopkeeper that you meet not super far into the game that will meet you outside the gate of the castle that you can go and buy things from. This is a really awesome system because he'll sell you some really good weapons. I got one weapon that I utilized for approximately 10% of the game that was just too good not to use. Had some good armor sets as well. If you want to forego looking for secrets, you do have an option to buy things from the vendor. He doesn't sell the same things you can find as secret items, but he will give you really powerful things if you want to grind for money. You can grind for money by enemies drop money. Sometimes you have things on the wall like little lanterns and torches. If you hit them, they'll drop money. They'll also drop little hearts. The floating hearts restore your mana, not your HP, which is a Castlevania exclusive. This is something they've been doing forever, but it is kind of confusing if you're just jumping into this for the very first time. You might think, why aren't the hearts replenishing my HP? You can only replenish your HP through things like potions and food drops that people will drop for you, or going to the save rooms. The save rooms will restore your health and mana completely and give you a chance to rest. So let's talk about the gameplay and the story elements now. Gameplay is absolutely fantastic. The action is seamless. You have really tight controls. Because this was used on a D-pad, it's really intuitive. Moving left and right is really basic, but if you crouch and you press a button, once you unlock the ability, you can slide, do a little slide tackle, or slide underneath areas that are too confined for you to fit over normally, like you can't just walk right through. You also can hold up to utilize your mana abilities. If you hold up and attack at the same time, you'll utilize your mana. So shooting fireballs, throwing the sea, like I talked about earlier. You also have the L and R buttons that are really important. The L gives you a backdash, so if you attack and you don't want to be in range, you can cancel some of your end lag and backdash to get away from them. Utilizing your R button will utilize your blue special ability. So that if that's like turning into a bat, if that's giving you the a gliding ability that you can get early on, these things can really help to mitigate some of the damage you take in battle and help your playstyle out as well. So let's talk about the story a little bit. So Soma gets here, he's just trying to find his way out, and he meets a cast of really interesting characters along the way. He meets a missionary named Graham, who seems a little mysterious and a little strange, and you find out later on that he was born at the same time Dracula died and has some unique powers. And as the story progresses, you find out that he is in fact the one that's going to be inheriting Dracula's power, and he is planning on usurping that mantle and going to the throne room and taking that power for himself, resurrecting as Dracula. You meet another man who has some amnesia. You find out later on his name is Julius Belmont, and his whole mission is to kill Dracula, obviously, since he's part of the Belmont family. He's going into the castle to find his whip so that he can go and slay Dracula. Really important side character that when you first meet him, you can't really tell who he is, but you have some suspicions that he could be a member of the Belmont family. When he reveals it to you, it's really cool. It's really interesting a way to bring in the Belmonts, especially since you're not playing as one. Since you're just playing as this guy that kind of got sucked into this place, it's interesting to have the Belmont still be a part of it. There's even some allusions to Alucard being part of this from Symphony of the Night, which is really cool. I love all the side characters. The way that they pull everything together is really awesome. So let's talk enemies now. The enemies are very varied throughout the entirety of the castle. You have different enemies in different areas. The first enemies are pretty basic. You have the ones like lumbering zombies that are easy to kill, little bats, stuff like that. Pretty simple enemies that can give you a little bit of trouble if you have too many of them, but aren't that lethal. And as you progress, you'll get more damaging enemies, more enemies with different fighting styles. You even have like a werewolf thing like a were-jaguar, I think is what it's called, that has like a boxing style and is super fast. The way that they implement these enemies and how they creep up the power as you go along is really, really well implemented. The power curve actually goes pretty hard in the latter half, maybe latter quarter of the game. it goes really scary. Some of the enemies get really difficult to fight. You have to utilize your spacing really, really well. Spacing is such an important part of these side-scrolling Castlevania games. If you're not utilizing your spacing, you're not playing the game right. So utilizing your spacing, understanding your abilities, and taking advantage of them as much as possible is essential to survive some of these enemies that get so much harder as the game progresses. The boss fights do the exact same thing. The earlier ones are intimidating in terms of their size. They can be like really large, but they're not too bad, and they only have a few basic attacks, like a giant skeleton, a knight, this armor knight, a rock golem. They're pretty simple design-wise. They don't have a lot of attacks, but as you keep going, they get more and more difficult and more intricate as well. One of the most interesting bosses in the game is the headhunter, who like gets a head off of the wall and becomes this powerful being. As you fight the first phase and you kill him, you cut off the head, gets a second one and turns into a completely different beast. And it's a really, really prolonged 3-round fight that's really hard to accomplish. That's when you realize that you're in the later stages of the game, that this is going to be very, very difficult. Death is also extremely hard. Big sweeping attacks. You don't even know how to dodge them initially. It took me several attempts just to figure out the attack patterns so I could effectively punish Death and keep away from these attacks that did a ton of damage as well. If you have enough items, you can recover your health, recover your mana as you go along. Utilizing, again, your abilities is really vital in taking down these bosses that are really, really difficult. Even the bosses that are maybe more defensive are really interesting as well. There's one that's like a ball. You have to attack a bunch of times, and as you attack it, it's like made up of a bunch of zombie enemies, and they start to fall off, and you have to take care of them as well, and it will pursue you. And then as the shell starts to break apart, you see the middle section of the thing. If you break off all the shell, it has 3 tentacles that will shoot laser beams at you. But if you're strategic and only knock off one part of the shell and try and attack the core without knocking off the other parts, you can stick down to 1 or 2 and keep yourself safe. Strategies like this really are fun to explore as you do the fight more and more, because you'll likely die to these bosses and some of these enemies multiple times. You'll understand better strategy of how you can progress. Now let's talk about the end game. The end game is really, really cool. If you do a bunch of exploration, go for a bunch of secrets, you don't have to do a full exploration of the castle. I did, because it's not super crazy, especially if you see a map online, you can see all the extra secret rooms you might have missed. But if you go for as much exploration as possible, you'll find 3 ancient books. And if you read the text on them, they give you clues as to what 3 souls you need before you go and fight Graham in the throne room. So if you utilize I believe it's the Flame Demon, the Succubus, and the Giant Bat. The Giant Bat you'll get automatically. Flame Demon and the Succubus are ones that you have to grind for, kind of. And there's actually some interesting stuff with like manipulation to get it on your first try. If you're playing it on the cartridge or emulating the cartridge itself, you can do things like doing into sleep mode on the Game Boy, and then rebooting right outside of the area. You can do some stuff to circumvent the grind part of it, but a couple of them, the Flame Demon I did have to grind. I couldn't figure out the save state manipulation stuff. So but getting these souls is vital. If you equip all 3 of them while you're fighting Graham, which is a very, very fun fight, he'll remark about the souls that you're using. He tells you that he's supposed to inherit Dracula's power, but he feels something inside of you. And when you kill him equipped with these 3 souls, if you beat him without the souls, you'll go to the end game, you'll get warped out of the castle, everything will be fine. But Soma remarks on something like, he feels like there's some unfinished business at the castle. If you beat him with the 3 souls, suddenly you'll absorb all the power, and you realize that Soma is Dracula, that he is the one, but he still has power over himself, fortunately. And he's approached by one of the NPCs that you've met throughout the game. He tells you of how to get rid of this power without killing you. As you progress through the rest of the game, you try and get to that point, Julius Belmont confronts you. You have a huge fight with him. Probably the best fight in the entire game. It's very long. He's very strong. He has a lot of different weapons. His moveset is essentially what you have in Smash Brothers Ultimate for Simon and Richter. He has all of those attacks. It's a phenomenal fight, and it's very terrifying. It takes a long time. You have to perfectly utilize your spacing, make sure you're using the right weapon. Everything you have to be perfect if you're going to be fighting Julius Belmont. He is very difficult and a very fun fight. Once you beat him, he realizes pretty early on in the fight that you are not fully Dracula, that there's still you inside of this vessel. And he tells you to go on and confront this power and try and exorcise it. And so then you go through this void area that's like a different variation of the castle, and as you progress through it, there are lots of hard enemies, and you get to the final boss, which is Chaos, which is another fantastic fight. I cannot say enough about how good the combat and the fights are in this game. And once you beat that, you get to this nice cutscene where everyone's rooting for you and channeling their energy and cheering on, so that you can exercise this power and get rid of Dracula, so you can stay you and leave the castle at the same time. And as you accomplish that, you and Mina exit the castle. You have a brief talk, and you realize everything is over. The bonus ending in this game is probably an extra 30 minutes to an hour of content. For a Game Boy Advance game, that's a ton of time. So if you don't utilize the full ending here, you're going to be missing out on quite a bit of content and some of the best bosses in the entire game. It's absolutely worth your time to go through and do everything that you can in this game. Aria of Sorrow is so much fun. It's one of the best Castlevania games in the franchise by far. I'm going to give Aria of Sorrow a platinum rank. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.